You just had a birthday, maybe you turned 30, maybe you turned 45. Somewhere along the way, someone probably joked that you're getting old. But here's the strange part. For most of human history, you would already be dead. Not from disease, not from famine, just from time itself running out. For decades, scientists believed something simple about your ancestors. They believed that if you made it to adulthood in the ancient world, you were lucky to see 30, maybe 35 if nothing went wrong. This idea shaped how people pictured the past: short, brutal lives, bodies worn out by 25, a world with no grandparents, no old age, no time to grow wise. But that picture is wrong, and the real answer is far stranger than anyone expected. Your ancestors were not biologically doomed at 30. They were surrounded by a world that killed them early, again and again, before their bodies ever got the chance to age. Strip away the violence, the childbirth deaths, the infections with no cure, and something remarkable shows up underneath. A body built to last. A body built for decades past 30. The question was never why ancient humans died so young. The question is why you were told they did. Start with the number itself. Where did died at 30 even come from? It came from averages. Early anthropologists looked at ancient skeletons, tallied up ages at death, and calculated a life expectancy. For much of prehistory, that average landed somewhere between 25 and 35. That number got repeated in textbooks, documentaries, and casual conversation until it became common knowledge. Ancient humans died young. Case closed. Except averages lie when the data is lopsided. Imagine a village of 10 people. 6 of them die before their 5th birthday. The other 4 live to 70. Add it up, divide by 10, and the average age at death looks like 28. Does that mean anyone in that village was biologically old at 28? No. It means child mortality dragged the number down so hard that it erased everyone who lived a full life. This is exactly what happened to the story of ancient humans. Infant and child mortality in prehistoric populations was brutal. Anthropologist Rachel Caspary, working with James Lee, studied hundreds of fossilized teeth from ancient hominins to estimate ages at death more precisely. Their research, published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, found something the old died at 30 story completely missed. Once early humans survived childhood, a meaningful number of them lived well into their 30s, 40s, and beyond. The average was low. The reality, for survivors, was not. So if bodies could last decades longer, what usually cut life short? Mostly the world did. Childbirth carried enormous risk with no modern medicine to fall back on. A simple cut could turn into a fatal infection. Predators, accidents, warfare, and famine all took a steady toll. Ancient life was not gentle, but none of that is the same as saying the human body was built with a 30-year expiration date. A wolf attack does not mean your knees were designed to fail at 32. It means the environment was dangerous, not that biology drew a hard line. Here is where it gets interesting. If you look at populations today that still live close to how ancient humans once lived, hunting, gathering, no modern medicine, you get a real window into this question. Anthropologists Hillard Kaplan and Michael Gervin spent years studying groups like the Hadza of Tanzania and the Tsimane of Bolivia. Their findings, published across multiple studies in the 2000s, showed a consistent pattern. Once someone in these communities survives the dangerous years of early childhood, their chances of reaching 60, even 70, are far higher than the old, died at 30, myth would predict. Death still came early for many, but biological aging was not the reason. Danger was. So why does the old myth still feel true? Why does ancient humans died at 30 still show up in casual conversation like settled fact? Because averages are easy to misread, and because a short, brutal past makes a satisfying story. It flatters the present. It lets modern life feel like an unbroken march of progress, from short, doomed lives to long, comfortable ones. The truth is messier. Your ancestors were not fragile. They were unlucky, over and over, in ways that had nothing to do with how long their bodies could actually function. And this brings up something even stranger. If human bodies could last into old age, why would evolution bother keeping people alive that long? A body stops being able to reproduce at a certain point. From a narrow, evolutionary lens, once reproduction ends, What's the biological point of sticking around? This is where one of the most compelling ideas in human evolution comes in. Anthropologist Kristen Hawkes proposed what's now called the grandmother hypothesis. Her research, based on observations of the Hadza and later supported by mathematical modeling with colleagues including James O'Connell, suggested that older women, past their own reproductive years, played a critical role in the survival of their grandchildren. They gathered food. They freed up mothers to have more children sooner. They passed down decades of hard-won knowledge about which plants were poison, which seasons brought drought, which paths were safe. In other words, grandmothers were not a biological afterthought. They were an evolutionary advantage. A tribe with living elders had an edge that a tribe without them simply did not. Over generations, that edge could shape the human lifespan itself, stretching survival well past the point of reproduction, because survival past reproduction still helped the group survive. Think about what that means. The idea of a natural lifespan capped at 30 does not just underestimate ancient humans. It erases an entire evolutionary strategy built around agging, wisdom, and care. It erases the grandmother sitting by the fire, teaching a child which berries will kill you and which ones won't. It erases the elder who remembered the last drought and knew where the water still ran. There's a deeper twist here too. Some researchers, including demographer James Vorpel, have pointed out that human longevity itself may be one of our species' most unusual traits. Compared to other primates, humans spend an enormous stretch of life past reproductive age. Chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, rarely experience anything like human menopause or a multi-decade post-reproductive life. Humans do. That is not an accident. That is a feature that shaped how human societies function, how knowledge gets passed down, and how children get raised. So the picture flips entirely. Ancient humans were not creatures who burned out by 30. They were creatures whose bodies were built for a long second half of life. A second half the dangerous ancient world simply made hard to reach. The wonder is not that so many died young. The wonder is that the body kept aiming for something so far beyond that, generation after generation, as if it always expected some of you to make it. And this is where it circles back to you. You live in a world almost entirely stripped of the dangers that once cut ancient lives short. No predators waiting in the tall grass, vaccines, antibiotics, safe childbirth, clean water. The threats that once made 30 feel like an ending have mostly disappeared. What's left, underneath all of it, is the same body your ancestors had. A body built for decades of contribution long after its reproductive years. A body that, biologically, was never in a hurry to stop. So the next time someone jokes about turning 30 or 40 or 50, remember what that number actually meant to your ancestors. Not an ending, not a biological deadline, just the age most of them never got the chance to reach, through no fault of their own bodies. You are not living on borrowed time. You are finally living in the conditions your body was quietly built for all along. You just had a birthday, and for the first time in most of human history, that number was never the problem.